The football transfer portal is open. We let you know where the Hawkeyes are shopping today. Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. I'm Trent Condon. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio and a lifetime Hawkeye fan. Today, we take a look at the transfer portal for college basketball and what new coach Ben McCollum is working on. Plus, we'll be joined by Scott Dochterman of The Athletic with his insight into the world of college athletics and the Hawkeyes. But we begin today with the portal opening in college football for the spring period. Now, historically, this is a time where you're not going to see the same depth that you see in the portal of the fall period or the winter period. After the regular season wraps up, that is going to be a little bit different than certainly we are used to, and the sheer number, the volume of players that are going to be entering here. You got to kind of pick and choose. You got to be a little bit more choosy. So let's start with an overview of where the Hawkeyes are and what they're going to be looking at here in this period before we get into a couple of names that are incredibly intriguing. So you start with who they lost, who was out. And as we talked about earlier in the week, everydayers, you know about this, and a big shout out to you, everyday fans of Locked On Hawkeyes. Brendan Sullivan, of course, former quarterback, couple of starts here, couple of starts at Northwestern. He'll be looking for a home to complete his eligibility. Gavin Hoffman, also a guy that's been lost here during the spring. Hoffman was one of the better prospects that Iowa got a couple of years ago in the class, not even a couple of years ago. I guess it would have been the class of 2024. Boy, how time goes quickly, right? He was a guy, though, had some big-time offers, tight end prospect. They were intrigued by his athleticism. I do go back, though, to when they had the big group coming in out of that class and the group together. He was the last one to commit. Some people said that, and just personality-wise, he's a little bit different, a little bit separated from that group that got so close out of that class together, and he was a little bit different there. He'll be looking for a new home. Talent, not a question about him, but you look at some younger people that you heard a little bit more about that also came in that class. Got to put the work in. And Gavin Hoffman is not going to be doing it with the Hawkeyes. The big blow, I believe, for the future is Joey Van Wetzinga. And after his brother was told that it was going to be difficult, likely for him to make the cut down to 105, he started looking around, and they wanted the opportunity to play together. And you could understand that. You can get that idea, that thought, playing together, and it wasn't going to be able to happen at Iowa because of the change in the roster limits. In the past, this would not have been a big deal where you can have 125, 130 guys on your roster. Remember, that is not the case anymore. The roster is capped at 105. So all players, walk-ons, everybody that's involved with the program, 105 is your roster limit. And that leads to a walk-on program that has been incredibly important to Iowa is going to have to look a whole lot different going forward. And that's a demerit. That's a problem for Iowa in the way that they've done things historically and the way that it's going to be. Van Wetzinga also, I think, wanted a chance at least to compete on the defensive side of the ball. They had him targeted for the offensive side. Now, when you look around and you kind of see what Iowa's been able to do, the guys that thought they were defensive linemen turned them into offensive linemen, and what it turned out to be, the latest addition, obviously, is Tyler Linderbaum and what he turned into. But there's been a few others. What's happening in the middle right now with Jones, you kind of look back and say, you know what, if they want me over there, then you take a look at some of the paychecks that are either coming or already there. In the case of Linderbaum, you say, you know what, I'm going to listen. Not the case, and not going to happen there. And then finally, John Nestor, who moves on, and that leads to really the questions. We talk about those last two positions. Offensive line for Van Wetzinga, though he wasn't going to be part of the plans this year. John Nestor was going to be part of the plans. He was going to be a guy that was going to be competing for a job, a starting job at a cornerback spot, what they were going to do with the cash position, and some moving back and forth and at least providing depth at those kind of positions. Well, that's not the case anymore as Nestor moved on. So we start with where they're looking. The positions that I was going to be looking for in the transfer portal. I get it. A lot of people right away, their mind drifts to wide receiver. And I see it all the time. You go to social media. You can follow us at Locked On Iowa, or myself at Trent Condon. And you see a wide receiver enters the portal, even if there is absolutely no connection to Iowa, maybe a guy that never in a million years would even think about coming to Iowa, and right away you see the Hawkeye fans in there. Please, please, please make it happen. I believe I was happy with their depth. Now, of course, if there was a good wide receiver prospect that Iowa had some ties to in the past and they came calling, they're not going to not take their phone call. I mean, that's silly. However, I believe Iowa believes that, and Tim Lester believes, they're at least in a decent spot at the wide receiver position. And overall, this roster, there are more important parts. It's very rare that we say that it's not wide receiver that is issue number one with the roster when you're looking through it. But this year, because of the depth that they have, I don't know if it's high level depth, but it is deep, something that hasn't been the case at the wide receiver position. Offensive tackle, specifically left tackle and cornerback. Those are the two most important spots. And one of those spots already, Iowa is lining up a visit with an offensive tackle, left tackle from Ferris State University. Bryce George is his name. So Bryce George has already scheduled 3 visits. This is a player that is well coveted. Now, another thing that we have to remember, because there is not the number of players that is normally in the portal in the other period, that this is going to be something where you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be interested. And if they have the money at this point, if they haven't spent whatever they have as it pertains to their budget, there's going to be teams that are going to be coming. Iowa, Cal, USC are the 3 that Bryce George has lined up visits. A Division II prospect from Ferris State, played in 14 games last year and has played in 41 career games. Iowa right away was involved, 6'5", 315 pounds, has won 3 national championships at Ferris State. That is pretty good for him. Let's be honest. I go back to 2 years ago. Iowa brought in an offensive tackle I think we were all excited about in Dejon Parker, and it didn't work. He got banged up, and it never clicked. It never happened. When you're talking about guys making the jump, there are the success stories, but it's not all the time. And I think we have to temper our expectations really with all transfers. But offensive line, maybe even a little bit more. It is a step up. And now I think of a guy that saw here in the state this year that made that transformation, Jalen Travis at Iowa State, who very well could be an NFL draft pick. Now, he was injured in August camp, and it was slow to get out there. But when he did, there was, coming even from Princeton, there was that transition period to go through. There's always going to be a transition, but I was still looking. I think eventually Trevor Lauk will be the guy at left tackle, but if you can build that bridge, you can get one more season with a transfer, 1-year guy at left tackle. Lauk gets a little bit more experience this year, and then as your starter in 2026, I think that's a good thing. And then the cornerback spot, they continue to look for depth there. No names yet on that front, but of course, we will keep you covered here on Locked On Hawkeyes. Let's go deeper into the Hawkeyes, talk about some spring football with Scott Dochterman, plus a little basketball talk and just college football in general with what's happening with Nico Imaleva, just the craziness in the portal. We'll do that as we continue talking with Doc next. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's why I use Game Time. I love the last-minute deals. 60% off, that's crazy. Buying those last-minute tickets for sports, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. And the best part, all-in pricing. I despise those surprise fees at checkout. You don't have to worry about that with Game Time. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks again to Scott Dochterman for joining us here as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Let's go from a lot of football talk, get into the basketball. The latest on Ben McCollum, still searching for that big man. Who is the latest? And the big names that I was competing against in the portal for some big men. That's next, Locked On Hawkeyes. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, we were realizing here at our house just how much we were spending on food delivery. Now we can budget smarter and save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code, it's Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com with the code Locked On College for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We roll into the basketball front and two names that bear some mentioning as it pertains to the portal. So last weekend, Iowa brought in big guy, a transfer portal candidate, Alvaro Vulgaris, for a visited last weekend. He is Villanova. A lot of people believe maybe the forerunner at the forefront for him. He had 3 visits set up and is currently at Villanova if the timeline matches up. Then coming up next week, we're going to hear Duke Brennan is making a run. He's coming in from Grand Canyon. Both these guys will be tremendous. Two guys that skill set similar, guys that can stretch the floor a little bit as bigs, but good rebounders, and I think would fit in well in the McCollum system. Problem with Duke Brennan, there are already some big schools after the Grand Canyon transfer, but now some blue bloods are getting involved, including Kansas. And if we know anything about the Jayhawks, money's not a real big object for them. Yes, Iowa is in a better spot in men's basketball as it pertains to the portal. However, not in Kansas. We're not fishing in those waters that the Jayhawks are. So if that comes to pass, if they miss out on a few other targets, could be a little bit concerning there for Duke Brennan. They'll continue to work. I believe in Ben McCollum. I am as excited for him as a coach as I've been for any coach in quite a while. I believe it's going to work. But ultimately, you got to have dudes. And they will continue to try to get those dudes. Another portal candidate, Enos, who is the D2 kid. He has, I believe, concluded his visits at this time. So might get some word pretty quickly on that front. Keep building this thing out. And away we go. We'll have plenty of basketball portal conversation with you. Plus the women's side of things, as they missed out one of their top targets earlier in the week with the UCLA transfer. Missed on that one. So back to the drawing board again for Jan Jensen and the women's basketball program. And as more candidates emerge on that front, we'll make sure to pass them along. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Network. And what obviously we have going on right now in the transfer portal, we will have you covered on that front. Tons to get into each and every day as more names emerge on the football front, basketball, women's basketball, all there. Plus, we got to talk a little bit of wrestling, baseball team after their series win against Nebraska, the women's softball team, what they've been doing, putting themselves in good consideration, lose their midweek game against Iowa State, but a big series coming up for them this weekend in the Big Ten as they try to punch their ticket into the Big Ten tournament. A lot going on, and we got you covered every day here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. And not just Locked On Hawkeyes. We got you covered. And of course, the NFL draft is right around the corner. Make sure if you're a second listen, you check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcast. That'll do it for today. Back at it tomorrow with you. Thanks for being with us. Shout out to you everydayers with us each and every day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.